Hello everyone once again, this is Rob, and welcome back to Media Awareness and my continuing celebration of Marillion Weekend. As you may have seen with my first video this weekend, I gave my story as to how I became a Marillion fan, and yesterday I did a review of the deluxe edition script for Jester's Tear, uh, 5 disc set. You can find both of those videos on my page, so feel free to look them up. If you are a follower of my page, welcome back. If you're new, please consider subscribing and becoming part of my YouTube family. I'd love to have you. Also, consider liking, sharing, and commenting below. If you're not comfortable commenting in the comment section, you are more than welcome to message me privately on Facebook, and you can find that link in the description, along with a link to my Patreon page, where you can choose to support this channel, and that'd be greatly appreciated. So, it is the 21st Marillion weekend, 21 years of celebration and appreciation of the fan base. And given that this is my first year of having my channel active, and I'm extremely excited about that, I figured I would go through my Marillion collection, albeit quite small in comparison to most, as I'm still growing my CD collection of Marillion discs. But I wanted to show off what I have nevertheless. So, without any further ado, I'd like to begin with the debut album, which of course was featured in my previous video, Script for a Jester's Tear. Now this CD is the 2 CD deluxe edition set put out a few years ago, and this is probably going to be going to my son, as he is a progressive rock fan, and given that I now have the deluxe edition set right here, I really don't need two of these. So my son's going to be getting the two disc edition, and of course I have the 5 disc collector's edition right here in hand, which is I will be proudly displaying on my Marillion shelf. Try saying that 5 times very fast. So we have the first album, The Script for a Jester's Tear. We have a meowing cat in the background as well. Then we have the second Marillion album, of course, also featuring Fish on vocals. The first 4 albums feature Fish, and he wrote the lyrics for those 4 albums primarily. Fugazi. And as you may recall, if you did watch my video yesterday, I was excited to show off a new edition, the deluxe edition of Fugazi, 5 discs as well. So as with my original Script for a Jester's Tear, my original Fugazi 2 CD set will be going to my son. Like I said, he's a progressive rock fan as well, and he really appreciates this music as much as I do. So he will be getting the single editions for now. But please stay tuned this week for a breakdown of this set once I have a chance to listen to it and look into what's contained within. As this is a massive book, just like the Script for Jester's Tear, and I'm really excited, and I want to say thank you again to the gracious viewer who was kind enough to reach out to me and ask me if I would want this in my collection and if I would be so kind as to review it. So thank you again, Fungazi. The third Marillion album, featuring Fish once again, is Misplaced Childhood. This is the 2 CD edition. Simple but effective. I do not have the deluxe edition of this. I hope to eventually, but given the limited edition manner it was put out in, and given the fact it was released several years back, I am doubtful that I will be able to have that in my collection. But if I do, you will see a review of that on this channel, a thorough breakdown. For now, though, I am pleased to have the 2 CD edition of Misplaced Childhood in my collection. If I do eventually get the 5-disc version, the single edition I'm holding here will be going to my son as well. And rounding out the Fish Studio album era, we have the masterpiece that is Clutching at Straws. This album is really probably debatably one of my favorite Fish era albums, right up there with Misplaced Childhood. This album is really amazing, and I highly recommend Clutching at Straws. I unfortunately only have the 2-disc edition of this as well, not the 5-disc edition that was issued a few years back. As I stated in my initial video this weekend, I was unaware of these editions until recently and missed out on both Misplaced Childhood and Clutching at Straws. So I am quite thankful to have this, but if I do end up being lucky enough to have the 5-disc edition of Clutching at Straws eventually in my collection, this CD will be going to my son as well, as it is truly a masterpiece that I think everyone that is a progressive rock fan should have. Now, even though I do not have the Clutching at Straws Deluxe Edition 5-disc set, I did do research on it, and I was rather disappointed to find out that there was no live concert footage included on the Blu-ray of that set. Specifically, this DVD, which could have easily been added to that set. This is, of course, Fish era, and this is the last Fish era release to my knowledge. This is also a fantastic concert that really showcases the band in their prime, I would say, and it was towards the end of the 1980s, and they're just in top form. This is a concert I was lucky enough to get several years ago, probably going on, oh God, maybe 15 years back. I was able to snag this online relatively cheap, but this concert is amazing. And if you are a fan of Fish or Marillion, you owe it to yourself to check this out. It is available to stream on YouTube, but you want to have this in your home collection if you are a fan. Now, of course, after the departure of Fish as the lead singer of Marillion, the band auditioned different vocalists, and they could have very easily gone with someone that sounded like Fish, but they didn't. They went with an amazing vocalist named Steve Hogarth, who has continued on to this day as the lead singer of Marillion. And his first studio album with the band is Season's End, which is a phenomenal album. I am looking forward to having the deluxe edition of this CD as well. This is a single disc edition, and once the deluxe edition is available, I will, of course, add that to my Marillion collection, and my son will inherit this disc, as it is really a great disc. Notably, most of the music on here was written, the band has said, for Fish to sing and to add lyrics to. But after Fish's departure from the band and him taking most of his lyrics with him, the band was pretty much tasked with writing the album and putting it together as a cohesive package. And it really turned out well. Standout track on here for me is Easter, but the rest of this album is also phenomenal. Season's End, the beginning of the Steve Hogarth era, or as it's known by fans of Marillion, H. H, of course, standing for Hogarth. And it was, I guess, sort of a passing of the torch from Fish to H in terms of going by a single name or a single letter, in this case H, for Hogarth. And Hogarth really carried on quite well with the band, and their the next album I have by them was to have been a commercially accessible and commercially acceptable album, which would have been played heavily and gotten a lot of radio exposure in addition to exposure on MTV. It did get some overseas in the UK and elsewhere overseas, but here in the US, this album did not fare well at all, despite its brilliance and its accessibility to a pop rock fan base. It is, of course, Holidays in Eden. Now, this is the original disc, and this is going to be going to my son right after this video. The deluxe edition of Holidays in Eden, a 4-disc set. Is it 4? 4 discs, yeah. This is a 4-disc set, and it contains the original album remixed and remastered and sounding much more modern and much more like a Marillion album. It also contains a live concert spread across 2 CDs and a Blu-ray with a documentary and some concert footage on there as well. So this is also a very, very lucrative set to have. It has a lot in it, and it's actually one of my favorite Marillion albums, despite many fans not being fond of Holidays in Eden. I think it's fantastic, and for people just getting into Marillion, especially the H era, you want to definitely check out Holidays in Eden. Continuing with the H era albums, I have one of the first 3 Marillion discs that I did purchase, and that would be the album Brave. This album is amazing. I unfortunately did not get the deluxe edition of this. I missed out on that when it was available, and I do hope to eventually have that deluxe edition for my collection at some point in the future, at which time I will pass this CD along to my son as well. But until that time comes, I have to make do with the 1-disc, single-disc edition of Marillion's Brave, one of their really, truly conceptual masterpieces, and just a moving experience to have. The next in my collection is the album Afraid of Sunlight. Now, this is my original CD version of the album, and this is the first album I ever listened to by Marillion. So, if you're going to start with a Marillion album, I'd recommend either Holidays in Eden or Afraid of Sunlight. And as I said, this was my original version, single disc, and one that I bought with along with two other Marillion CDs to just kind of dip my toes in the water and get myself familiar with the material. And from this album alone, I was a fan. That's all it took. And going hand in hand with Afraid of Sunlight, we have the deluxe edition of Afraid of Sunlight, which is a 5-disc edition. You get the original album, the original mix of the original album. You also get a remixed and remastered edition of the album, along with a 2 CD live concert and a Blu-ray with documentaries, different promotional material, and of course the album in surround sound, and just a plethora of different stuff. This is a great set, and I really highly recommend these deluxe editions. But this one, Afraid of Sunlight, this album really means a lot to me, having been the album that really got me hooked on Marillion. So I'm pleased to have this in my collection, and my original CD of this will also be going to my son after this video. So he's getting quite a few discs today. But I wanted to show this to you guys. Once again, there is a review of this deluxe edition as well as the Holidays in Eden deluxe edition in my videos below. So you can check those out on my channel, along with the most recent one I did for Script for a Jester's Tear. And like I said, stay tuned for one coming up on Fugazi as well. Continuing on and skipping a few albums that I do not have at this time as of yet. The next album in my collection is Radiation. Now this is a really amazing album, and like with all Marillion albums in the H era, every album sounds different, and Radiation is no exception. This album really has an unusual sound to it, and the songs are just phenomenal. It is a brilliant album, and one that I highly recommend once you have checked out Holidays in Eden and Afraid of Sunlight, assuming you haven't already done so. Radiation is one to check out. Skipping ahead once again, but not very far, we have Arachnophobia. This album is one of the 3 that I initially purchased, and I love this album. It's very accessible, but I really do like it. It's not as progressive as the Fisher material, and certainly not as progressive or conceptual as, let's say, Brave was for the H era albums, but this is still a great album and one not to be ignored. Jumping ahead once again, as I previously stated, my collection, Marillion, is far from complete. I hope to have a complete collection at some point, someday soon. In the meantime, though, I am grateful for what I have, and I add to it as I am able to. And the next album I have to showcase is an album that really means a lot to me. Sounds that can't be made. This album is really amazing. And this kind of was an album that I was drawn to during a particularly difficult time in my life a few years ago. and it's an album that I listened to almost continuously during that time, and it really helped me to get through some hard times. This album is special to me as a result, and I love it. Getting even closer to present day, we have the Marillion album Fear. Now, for those of you who know this album, you know what Fear stands for. I'm not going to pronounce it here on my channel, but all you have to do is look it up and you'll find out what it means. It is a phenomenal album. It is very poignant in terms of society today and really the overall makeup of the world itself. And even though this album is a few years old at this point in time, it is still a relevant album sociologically and politically. It is an album not to be ignored. Marillion's Fear. Last but not least, in my Marillion studio album collection, we have the most recent album, which was released in 2022. It is the Masterpiece album, An Hour Before It's Dark. And this album is just beautiful. It's phenomenal, it's moving, it's very relevant to society today and what we're dealing with on a global scale in all aspects, politically, sociologically. Just, it is an album that I think everyone needs to hear, and something that I think is really relevant for society. Now, as I stated, Marillion is a progressive rock band. However, throughout the H era specifically, even the Fish era, but more so the H era albums, every album is different. And they all have a different sound, a different feel, and they really stand on their own as true pieces of musical art. The only DVD that I have of the H era material is this one right here. I hope you've enjoyed the look at my Marillion collection. As I said, in comparison to most people out there who are and have been diehard fans, my my collection is nothing, and I'm rather embarrassed about that because normally I have a vast collection of material into a band, but having just really got started getting into them in the mid 2000s and really diving in more so over the past 4 or 5 years, I've only had so much time to be able to get what I have here currently, and I do hope to add to this soon as stated. For now, though, I hope you've enjoyed this video and this look at my Marillion collection, both Fish era as well as H era. This is Rob with Media Awareness. If you like my channel, like what I do here, please consider liking, sharing, and commenting below. If you're not comfortable commenting in the comment section and you want something more private, you are more than welcome to message me at my Facebook link, which can be found in the description, along with the link to my Patreon page, which you can choose to support this channel with, and that'd be greatly appreciated. You'd also find a link to the Amazon Media Awareness wish list, where you can pick and choose items for me to unbox, review, etc. I do hope that you all have a fine weekend. It is Sunday, the end of the weekend, but make the most of the evening, morning, afternoon, wherever you are, make the most of it. And have a wonderful, wonderful day, night, morning, whatever it is. Take care. Bye.